I used to dream of being a professional rugby player, but I wasn't good enough to make it to that level. Luckily for me, I was fortunate enough to play alongside and against many players who made a career out of rugby. Now I work in the school system, and I get to see the bigger picture, developing teenagers and helping them achieve their goals. These 7 tips I'm going to share took about 24 years of learning to play the game to really find out what makes the biggest difference. I really wish someone had given me these tips earlier in my rugby journey, as I feel they could have given me the edge over other players over the years. These tips aren't just for players. Whether you're a coach, parent, or someone who just loves rugby, hopefully you'll find some value in these. My first tip for any player is learn to tackle. I tried every different technique over the years. In fact, I don't think I could actually tackle until I was playing men's. So many different coaches and clinics, and in the end 2 things came together which completely changed my game. First being attitude. This is a quality I feel every coach tries to inspire their players to achieve, and truthfully, it took a long time to click. You can be the strongest, fastest, fittest player on the field, but if you don't want to tackle and you don't learn to love tackling, it just won't happen. You need that ticker, that hunger inside you that'll make you get yourself in the right place to make the tackle, which is much easier to say than actually change. The problem I found, which is my second thing here, is I still didn't have a safe technique, safe for me as a tackler. This all changed when I stumbled upon Jamie Joseph's video on YouTube teaching a bunch of Americans how to tackle. I know there's a lot of experienced people out there watching this video, but this technique by far is the most successful I've seen as a player and a coach. It's built on the principles of step in, same leg, same shoulder, and the absolute golden tip of this technique is when you wrap, pull in the attacker's outside leg from behind their knee. It's the secret herbs and spices to tackling, and lets the defender take control of the tackle. Every time there's a really good clean, legal tackle on TV, there's a good chance it's this technique. A video I highly recommend watching after this one, and deep down is something I wish I knew from my first game of rugby. Leading on to my second tip, which is always prioritise a dominant tackle over the jackal. Pretty much every professional team has gone with this approach. If you can get the defender going backwards, there's a better chance of forcing a turnover. It's much safer, cleanouts won't come at you with as much force, and statistically, you have way more success following a dominant tackle to earn the turnover. As the rules of rugby have changed so much in the last decade, the David Pocock style of jackling is long gone. Having a crack at every breakdown now is a really low percentage play. It puts less numbers in the defensive line and is physically exhausting. Another skill or mindset that will improve any player's game out of sight is reaction time. There's a reason why the All Blacks went so long just punishing teams for their mistakes, and that was because the time it took them to turn defence into attack was the blink of an eye. In the modern day, this is France's flair attack. If you can always stay alive and expect the ball throughout an entire game, so many more chances will arise. A quick example of this in a game, if the opposition team knock the ball on, don't celebrate, don't rest, don't get your breath back, because this is your best chance to score a try. Become an option, scan the field quickly. It's definitely a skill that you need to practice, but it's an absolute game changer for teams and players. My fourth tip is to improve decision making. It really doesn't matter how far you can pass or how well you can kick if you can't pull it off in a game. Try to get yourself in as many opposed situations as you can while you're working on your rugby skills. Whether it's a game of force and backs or a game of social touch football, get yourself playing with opposition. The same thing with training. Cleaning out on a hit shield is great for body height, but it really doesn't teach you where to contact and where to put your arms for an effective clean out. These decisions need to become autonomous in your game and happen subconsciously. Now, with gym and weightlifting becoming such a key part of rugby training, I definitely recommend prioritising your fitness over your size. You can do so much more with a high level of fitness on a rugby field and the functional strength this gives you than having big muscles or overwhelming body mass. If you're lifting weights, you really want a program that will prioritise strength, power, or hypertrophy than purely body mass. If you don't know much about those things, I highly suggest Googling them. You hear these crazy stories about Richie McCaw breaking every record for the yo-yo test, and there's a reason for that. Have a think about your Richie McCaws, Dan Carters, Bowden Barretts. Most had really high fitness and functional strength. These next 2 tips are for people really aspiring to become professional athletes, or maybe you're helping foster people through that process. Have something outside of rugby that you enjoy and look forward to. Life can't revolve around rugby, and too much of one thing is never healthy. It doesn't matter what it is. I actually learned a lot of this mindset through Quade Cooper, coming back and seeing the way he'd answer his interview questions.
As I said, for me, footy is just a small part of my life.
If everything does just revolve around the one thing, you end up so sporadic in your emotional feelings, up and down, and it's not a good way to be. Make sure there's that balance there, and there's hobbies outside of rugby that can really be enjoyed. My final tip is, don't overthink or be too hard on yourself. When you play, try to get yourself in the zone, and if you make mistakes, well, that's just what happens. I could spend a lot of time going into detail on sports psychology, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty of it, the more pressure you put on yourself, the worse you're going to perform. So don't worry about it. Make those mistakes, have a crack, and enjoy the ride. And that tip really goes for parents as well. Don't put too much pressure on the kids. The absolute worst thing I see in junior footy, and it's really hard for myself as well, is don't get in the ear of kids and tell them what to do and undermine the coach constantly, because all it's doing is having the opposite effect. Please chuck down in the comments if there's anything you'd like to share with the wider group. This video was a very different approach for me. I've spoken completely off the cuff and tried to make it really personal. As always, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.